last week I saw the terms of reference. They were announced for the Commonwealth Government COVID-19 response inquiry, but I also read many comments that people are pretty quick to point out some very big flaws. For starters, the inquiry seems to lack teeth, but it also doesn't going to look into the state response, only federal. So I've got to ask you, what's the point of this inquiry if we can't actually examine everything that happened?
The point of the inquiry, Cory, is to effectively sweep it under the carpet. The sooner that governments put COVID behind them and their totalitarian overreach behind them, the better as far as they are concerned. To exclude the premiers, the unilateral decisions of the premiers, is completely outrageous from the point of view that they were the ones driving the fear in the first place and driving these very unfair and cruel lockdowns, lockups, lockouts, and that eventually led to, you know, a rollout of a vaccine that required, you know, then they imposed mandates. You couldn't go out if you didn't have a vaccine, et cetera, et cetera. That then led to, you know, an increase in 10,000 deaths in 2021 over 2020, despite the fact that there are only an extra 300 COVID deaths. So where did the other 9,700 extra deaths come from? You know, questions need to be asked, was that the vaccine or not? We need to also look at, you know, where the virus actually came from. Was it made in the lab? Was it you know, naturally made? And there's been a lot of evidence of a cover-up involved there from Anthony Fauci changing the story, telling scientists to make the story that it was a natural leak rather than a leak from a laboratory. So we need to look at that. You know, we need to look at the PCR testing and whether or not what the PCR test was testing was actually coronavirus or a virus that was common to all flus. I've asked numerous questions of the TGA about the accuracy of that PCR test, and they won't provide me with the code. So there are a lot of questions, but leaving the premiers out and their outrageous actions in the first 18 months of the pandemic is an absolute insult to all those people that suffered from lockdowns, lockouts, who, you know, from people who are unable to see their loved ones as they passed, people who are unable to get to hospital. So yeah, it's just a complete and utter whitewash.
It is. I mean, let's remember the government promised a royal commission. This is far from a royal commission. But do you reckon there's a chance that we could maybe claim, because National Cabinet was implemented and the premiers were part of National Cabinet, that they should be hauled into a federal inquiry, or is that too long a bow to draw?
No, it's not too long a bow to draw. And one of the things I've been fighting for all this time is for the minutes of National Cabinet to be released. I've actually been, you know, myself and a lot of my colleagues in Canberra have been asking for vaccine contracts to be released, a whole heap of data to be released. I mean, democracy has to be upheld by accountability and transparency. And there has been cover-up after cover-up, particularly by the TGA, but also by the Office of the Gene Technology Regulator, by ATAGI, by the Department of Health. You know, some of the figures the Department of Health have given me in regards to their figures don't actually tie back to the state data, or, you know, they've given me figures where the deaths from Omicron have been higher than the deaths from Alpha, which of course doesn't make any sense. So yes, the minutes of the National Cabinet should be released, and you could, yeah, it's a valid argument. I mean, you shouldn't have to rely on the argument that the premiers are a part of National Cabinet, because they should be willing to come forward and be held accountable for their actions.
Hear, hear. And you are, that's why I say you're one of the fearless few, because you're daring to raise these questions.
Authorised G. Rennick, LNP Chermside.